I'm very excited to be in the room where the new record from Big Cats and Chance York was recorded. The new record is Higher Self. And I'm not only am I in the room, but I'm with Chance York and Big Cats.
We're all here.
Welcome, we're all here.
We in here.
And I love the record. It was a great release show as well.
Thanks, man.
When City Pages were covering the release show, they highlighted that Big Cats, you were responsible at the release show and on the record, of course, for the deliciously woozy trap beats is what
I didn't see that.
We
I
said
like that, though.
What is this article
deliciously
you're talking
woozy. Yeah. And Chance, your lyrics are affirmations of revolt and self-empowerment. That's what City Pages said.
Cool.
And Reviler...
I should probably read that.
Yeah, I might want to check that
well,
out.
it's okay. You know it now.
Yeah, now I know. I heard the best parts.
And very similarly, Reviler highlighted that Big Cats brings the twitchy hi-hats and synths, and Chance York walks a confident line between matching the playfulness of the beats and speaking truth in a time of epic uncertainty. Okay?
Bang.
So there's two existing accounts of the
uncertainty.
relationship between the two of you on the record, yeah? So everything's
I'll
connected.
take it.
Yeah.
My
everything.
first question then is what is the connection between those deliciously woozy trap beats and these lyrics to do with self-empowerment? In other words, the relationship between how this sounds and the philosophy infused with yoga philosophy, yeah? Of the lyrics.
As far as the first time we sat down and we're like, hey, we're gonna make this project, that was what we were trying to do. We were trying to make banging beats with essentially just yoga philosophy or affirmations and looking within to find empowerment, like exactly like they're saying.
Did that initially seem to you like there would be incongruity, like the banging beats are at odds with the yoga philosophy,
it's hard
not
to say.
necessarily?
Yeah, it's hard to say that it's been done before, and we're always trying to go to like break new grounds or whatever. But I feel like we're trying to reach an audience that is used to a banging sound and kind of just give a message that's a little different than the mainstream.
Is there a distance between the philosophy that you wanted to communicate and, if there is one, the philosophy or the ethos that normally goes with how this music sounds?
Yeah. Well, absolutely.
So if we just had the sound of the music without the vocal, what ethos would you think would normally attach to that?
Man, I mean, it can be anything. The hip-hop game, people are saying, there's a lot of voices out there saying their own story and telling their own observations of the world.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I feel like a large trend is not very positive, or maybe just individualistic, like I'll F your B,
Yeah.
Right.
type,
Right.
get rich and, F everybody but me type thing, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, there are a few things wrong with that.
Right. Well, I shouldn't say there's nothing wrong with it, but it's not me. It doesn't resonate with me because I'm really trying to understand the energies involved in saying what you mean and meaning what you say, and how vibrations and frequencies and messages really are conveyed and repeated and become reality. We're trying to make something that is very palatable sonically, sounds very commercial and can fit into a lot of spaces.
Yep.
And just lace it with outright positivity or like a focus at you can change your perspective.
At your recommendation, I read some Byron Katie before the interview.
Yeah.
And I know that she emphasizes that when we think about suffering, it's our thoughts about what's happening to us that cause the suffering as opposed to things. So her example was someone says to her, when my husband is doing a business call, I hate the breath. I can hear his breath and I hate it and I hate him. And it's not the breath that's causing her suffering, it's her
feeling about it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's
so is that what you were kind of getting at?
Exactly. I think what I've been learning a lot being immersed in yoga and everything is that we have these just outrageously privileged lives. Like everybody has all these options and just an abundance of wealth that we may not even be able to see.
Yeah.
Because we're too focused on what the next person has or what we don't have or the absence of something else. So I think we all suffer from a conditioning of just not being able to be thankful for what we have, and we're suffering all the time because we think we're missing something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all perspective. People think this crazy world is coming at them, but actually this crazy world is coming from them.
Yeah.
It's about just readjusting perspective.
When we were talking about your recent solo record, because you had 3 records come out in 2016.
Hey.
Yeah. So when we were talking about Fed and Famished a few months ago, back in August, I think, I was highlighting the focus on metaphors. And in the final song, Learned, it emphasizes metaphors define the way we think. Every working system has its kinks.
Mm-hmm.
So we were talking about that a bit, and the extent to which these metaphors that we live by define our culture. So not just the way that we think, but therefore also the way that we act.
While every working system has its kinks, metaphors define the way we think. And all our thoughts are put in little packages. Words are just the conduit we send them through, but oftentimes our thoughts don't fit in packages. Cause words mean different things depending who you're talking to. I might be...
We were saying, if you talk about being offended by someone in an argument, say, then the way in which we have dialogue ends up being more warlike.
Mm-hmm.
Just
yeah,
because
it's
that's
combative. Well,
Yeah,
you're acting
combative.
defensive,
Yeah.
Stop attacking me.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you're aware of that, and you're kind of exploring that
Right.
in the previous record,
Right.
in the second of 3 records from
Word,
2016.
yeah, the power of words, man. That's and that was awesome in that interview when you said, "Have you ever read this book?"
Blackoff and Johnson.
Yeah, the
Metaphors
we live by, and that's exactly what I was basing that particular song on.
Yeah.
But overall, the whole record is like, like I don't want to critique the rap game saying that there's anything wrong with it, because it's not right or wrong, but the outcomes of it, with this negativity and this self-centered focus and this, destructive misogyny and, self-glorification. It's not saying that there isn't a time and place maybe where that does lead to something good.
Yep.
But overall, it's just sitting in a place where people are like, oh, well, I can enjoy this song for how it sounds and sing along to it and everything, and it's not really affecting me. But I think from my experience on this earth, is I do think things that you repeat and hear often become everything about the way that you perceive what's coming at you, and you end up becoming a vessel of these ideas that may be self-destructive, you know, in many cases are self-destructive.
The self-glorification is self-destructive.
Well, totally.
Perhaps even of the self in a way. And it could be mistaken for positivity and,
Right, being happy with yourself is the essence of love.
Yep.
Self-love is a great thing. And on the flip side of the coin, just loving yourself is an awful thing.
Yeah.
Like you should love yourself as you love everything else. You got to love yourself first before you can love anything else. Yeah, it's just a double-edged sword, because understanding and activating your own power can be extremely self-serving.
Yeah.
Or it can be perpetuating the growth of the community or the actual success that you're trying to achieve. I don't think anybody just wants to be successful on their own. People overall really want to see other people doing well.
Or we might get the idea that we want to be successful on our own because we've been hurt.
Right, and I mean, hell yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's just a lot of suffering. You see it on the internet. You got just people trolling and cyberbullying with their free time. It's like, why you go on the internet to spread negativity because it maybe makes you feel good temporarily. But really, that's causing a division that is leaving ripples throughout the world, but most deeply inside of yourself. In that whole isolation, people begin to feel really lonely when they get their pleasure out of dividing themselves. The human condition is suffering, and
it takes different forms, but we can.
But it's all about how we view it.
Yes.
We create our suffering.
Sometimes collaboratively.
Oh, completely.
But it's always.
it's a society of self-hurt, self-serving suffering.
Yeah, a recurring focus in Fed and Famished was how words mean different things to different people, and you didn't want to make statements like "fuck the government,"
Right.
because these words could mean very different things to different people.
Totally.
Like government, what does government mean?
Yeah, what does fuck mean?
Yeah,
like
and
that's-
what does self mean? Because we were talking about self-love, and then the record is called Higher Self, so it depends, of course, what one means by the self, what
Right.
one is loving.
Right. Well, that's something that was recently introduced to me through all the yoga that I've been practicing, and it's the capital S self. It's the self. The highest self is to achieve a oneness or an equanimity, understanding that everything is connected, and that's when we are
just
our
a part of
highest
it.
self, and we're not dividing ourselves into that's you and this is me. A lot of religions and faith structures are built off the grand, the big one, you know, the divine, or the, you know, I and I, or, you know, God, or however it wants to be put. So the self is this collective consciousness, this collective being that we all are.
Yeah.
And
No matter who I'm with, I'm by myself, because we're all alike. So we're all the same when we're our higher self.
Bang.
Is that the final lyric on the record? It's certainly the lyric with the title track.
That is my final
reference
lyric
in it. Yeah.
And it's about that. It's about the climate of everything, this epic uncertainty or monumentous thing we're going through.
Yes.
You know, it has a lot to do with mental health.
Yep.
Has a lot to do with compassion and just feeling, you know, alone. And, you know, depression in most cases comes from feeling isolated or feeling alone or disempowered or whatever.
Yep. Being unaware that the suffering is an aspect of the human condition,
right.
feeling that it's just my suffering.
Right. So the step, you know, the cure, or you know, the best treatment for it is to empathize and to send your love and your energy and your compassion outward. You know, open up your heart chakra and understand that everyone around you is suffering. Even that person that cut you off on the freeway and flicks you off, you know, it's like perspective is like, hey, I should speed up and flick that dude back off to let him know he should not have done that, rather than just be like, wow, that poor person has to stay with themselves for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Well, I just get to watch them drive off, you know? It's like understanding that people that are trying to inflict, you know, they're trying to inflict hurt on you are actually hurting more inside than you are. So,
and then empathizing with
right,
them.
and being like, wow, poor, you know, like, I wish I could help you, instead of like, yeah, take that, conk, you know, like, and that's you know, it's a practice. It's not something that everybody just does naturally, to be like, yo, I'm super divine and super empathetic, and I'm like this great person that can just empathize with everybody. It's a practice. Like whenever you get stressed out, whenever somebody is like grinding your gears or whatever, that's a gift to understand where you can work on yourself, or a lesson learned about, you know, staying peaceful.
Yep. So the type of positivity that we find in this record is not a kind of surface level, shallow, just be happy.
No.
It's connected to work
work.
and discipline
It's
and
all
practice.
about, it's
all
like,
of those words have a special significance within like the yoga philosophy. I think, you know, for example, Byron Katie's practice is
work.
called the work.
The work, that's right, yeah.
And you were saying about medication and the focus on medication as a way of resolving mental health issues. Or you have a lyric in Woke, instead of getting medicated, I elevated and got acquainted with the greatness.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Man, those are some bars. Sorry, it's new to me, so I'm still like,
That shit's hot.
Yeah, I'm still pretty excited about. I got it out the way that I wanted to, and really smooth. But yeah, I mean, another thing about yoga is like, there's no right or wrong. It's not like I'm as a person, we don't have the capacity to really be capable of judging somebody. You know, like in all religion, it's like, judge not. you shouldn't be judging what's good or bad or right or wrong. But there's definitely a difference, there's waking and baking. Or for, waking up and like, praying or whatever.
Yeah.
There's just all sorts of ways to live these routines. So I think yoga taught me how to just like be high all the time without medication.
Yeah.
But not saying that there's anything wrong with people that take medication or smoke or drink. Not saying that I don't do any of those things, but it's definitely my relationship with the chemicals that I use to have a good time has changed drastically because of my baseline feeling, just because of I don't know. So with specifically, instead of getting medicated, I was talking about instead of waking up and getting high, which, it's a rap theme.
Yes.
I may have written songs about that in the past because there's something cool about it, but maybe not as long lasting as I'm looking for.
Yeah. The album opens with Waking Up. This first track is called Woke. Woke up today feeling real good. Woke up today feeling lovely. And which is a nice English word, I think.
Lovely.
It's more common in England. And so that was a nice surprise.
I did that for you, bro.
Oh, thank you.
That and moving house.
Which I was doing. I was moving. Even if I don't, I readjust and give thanks that I could.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk a lot more about yoga philosophy and about the process. Like, how does this readjustment happen? We're going to come back to some specific lyrics. You were talking about judgment, and the one time that judgment comes up on the record is in Unafraid, where you're talking about, loving the haters even, and then you say if you're in love with your paper, you're probably feeling alone. But then immediately you do what you just did in the conversation, which is say, but ain't no judgment from me. Okay, so you have a sense from your shifted perspective that if someone is turning to drugs or writing a paper or
money, that's the paper. If you're in love with your paper, which is also a very rap theme, it's like, yo, fuck y'all, get money. It's like, get money. And
so the money is paper.
Right,
money,
that was the reference. And, there's nothing wrong with chasing money either, except for the outcomes can leave you feeling unsatisfied. Material goods is not going to fill the holes that exist in the nature of suffering.
Yeah.
But when you're in poverty, it's great. Getting money is that's a priority. So that's what I'm saying. Like, if you're in love with your paper, you're probably feeling alone because that's a natural outcome.
Yeah.
Of putting too much emphasis on material good or monetary gain or whatever. But at the same time, hey, no one knows like you know. No judgment from me. No one knows like you know. That's what I was just trying to draw a distinction between, go do what you need to do, whatever that is. But money, like much of the rap culture will tell you, money does not mean happiness. Or money doesn't.
The rap culture is already saying that. Doesn't
I
it?
feel, I mean, and also, like, I'm not trying to judge or paint broad strokes. The rap game is extremely diverse.
Yeah.
And there's all sorts of great stories being told. But the main, the main nerve of it, I feel like, is kind of one track mind. The stuff that really goes, and that's hard to say too. But from my observation, what I've seen in the scene as I watch it is a very shallow, I shouldn't even say shallow. It's a very one track type of thing, and it's kind of always has been. It's like get money, fuck bitches. That's
cars.
That's that rap shit. Fuck yo bitch. That's particularly like.
Yeah.
So all of that makes me, not critical. I understand it's a perpetuated cultural belief, and no one's wrong for doing that. But I'm just trying to show an alternate perspective.
Yeah.
That can reach longer lasting positive effects on a community.
Again, Reviler said that you were in part matching the playfulness of the beats. And I think that you're playing with some of the tropes from rap culture as we were kind of just describing it. For example, you do kind of concede, I think it's in Higher Self, the possibility that, is it like a limousine or something? There is a
so
reference.
you can
is
drink
it
a
a
Zima.
Yeah.
So you can drink a Zima.
In a limousine.
Limousina.
Yeah, and then you acknowledge that could lead to happiness effectively.
Right.
But
That actually sounds pretty fun.
it does sound
drinking
fun.
I don't know if Zima still exists, but you know,
Pretty sure you
replace
gotta
it with something
import
else.
it. Yeah, you gotta import
It's
it. from
fun, and
somewhere.
so it's good. It's never too preachy, I think, the record. And
Good.
so you acknowledge that that's fun, but then you do highlight that there's a risk of, if you kind of devote yourself too much to that, there's a risk of what you want becoming what you feel you need. And then
I said, DJ,
Is
hold
that-
the needle. I said,
what's that,
hold it.
DJ? Hold the needle.
Stop. There's just a lot that doesn't interest me. Being famous has never been my goal, but
Yep.
trying to understand what is successful and what is stable, money-wise, while also being able to be the entity that I want to be, rather than, I got to make a hit record, else I won't be able to afford this shit that I think I need now. Like,
Yeah.
if I can't afford a bodyguard and a limousine and a house that has a wall far enough away so the paparazzi can't take pictures or whatever, you become trapped in this idea of success. And I see that it happens all the time, and it seems isolating.
Yeah.
It seems like a curse more than a blessing.
Chance, your 2016 involved, first of all, releasing 3 great records. The Crunchy Kids one was in my top 5 local albums for City Pages at the end of the year.
Thanks, man.
you're very
We
welcome.
made a list.
Yeah.
I'm gonna delete all that. I'm gonna delete that long ass
Anti-list.
post I made about No, just kidding.
I got so many like Twitter drafts I need to delete real quick.
Yeah, right. Like and y'all, no.
But you
I quit doing that in 2015.
But so it's 2016, you released those 3 records. You did a lot of thinking about the very troubling aspects of 2016. And then you got into yoga and became well read in all of this yoga philosophy. And then you come to Spencer, presumably, is this the case, and say, I would like to make a record about this. Is that how it happened?
Sort of.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, your 2016, you did your solo record.
I did, in
which
March,
which
yeah.
involved lots of your other, like Eric Mason and Lydia Liza and Nelson Devereaux.
Right.
Were involved in that too. And we were talking about positivity, and you were saying there's a lack of positivity perhaps in some of the hip hop scene.
More or less,
The
yeah.
title. So my first question for you, Spencer. We were just talking about being trapped in our mind, or trapped in celebrity or something, and then we have the trap beats. And I was asking before about the connection between the two. What did you think when?
Different kind of trap. I
It's
guess,
a very
but-
different kind of trap.
Or
Well,
But yes, so how
right,
different? Yeah.
Right.
So my first question again, but now directed to Spencer. So to contextualize, your record, what if it doesn't get better? You've highlighted that although the title seems negative, it's positive. It's a positive question. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
so,
it's really
to
not far
refresh
off
our memories.
from highest self, honestly, because
Yeah.
it's like just not being content or being complacent with the way things are just because that's the way things are,
Okay.
and sort of like constantly pushing yourself to progress and improve and get better and grow.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. So we could be suffering, like you could be fixating on one particular thing, like the problem in a relationship, or not getting a raise, or some kind of specific issue. What if that doesn't get better? Like, can we work within that situation, beyond that situation, despite it not getting better? Is that part of what's going on in that title?
Yeah, and I think it's looking at it like what can I do to make a situation better? Like
Okay.
if I don't like a situation, instead of just like, well, this situation sucks and it's always going to suck and I'm always going to be miserable. Like, no, you can do anything you want to do. If
What
a
if
situation sucks, like do some work, do some thinking about how you can make it not suck, or get out of that situation, or create a new situation for yourself that you actually like.
Yeah. What if it doesn't get better of its own accord? Then what
Right.
can one do?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not the case that chance comes to you with all of these ideas, and the ideas are something that you're unconcerned about. You're independently, even in your solo record, dealing with some of these ideas. Would you say?
Yeah, I think Chance and I have different like lenses that we're looking at these things through, but
Yeah.
the reason that we get along and hang out and work on music is because we have a lot of these
Yeah.
things in common and think about things in similar ways, you know. And we had been before this. It's not like Chance showed up at my house and said like, "Hey, dude, I want to make," you know, like we've
It
worked
started
together.
as a text, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, I was going to ask
It's-
exactly how it happened.
The
because-
deadline, yeah, I was gonna say that story is actually kind of cool. If you,
Oh, just how the show came about?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Chance and I have played in Eric Mason's band together for the last, 2 years or something. And this whole
you were
record.
part of the detail.
Yes. Yeah. And this record, High as Self, actually came together because Chance and Crunchy Kids had been offered a show at Ice House that they weren't able to do as Crunchy Kids.
Okay.
And so Chance came to me and said, "Hey, you want to play this show? The two of us could do something." Because we'd played, 2 shows together maybe before
Right,
that?
yeah, he and-
or a couple
he-
with Mason too, maybe
yeah, it was
3 or
me,
4
you, and
shows.
Mason at Honey one time that Tony was like, "Hey, you guys should do a set."
Tony Williams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we
Can you
had,
describe?
the three of
Yep.
us had did like a trio set where we just kind of played our greatest hits and made a set out of it.
Yep.
And then you had the residency at Ice House.
Right.
And
So this summer, once we did a show, just the two
yeah.
of us.
Which was also called What If It Doesn't Get Better?
Yeah.
And it was improv.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So we did that one, and then this was like, yeah, it might have been just because it was at Ice House. I was like, me and Big Cats could do something, and we're like, yeah, let's just get together and talk about it. And
Yeah.
we got together, and I was like,
Oh shit, we need music to play.
yeah, what are we
we
gonna
don't have
play?
half an hour of music.
And I said, what we should do? We should just make a new record in like breakneck time. We had. I think this is like a month out from the date.
Yeah.
We're like 5 weeks out from the date that we decided we were gonna make a record to release on that date, and that's how it happened. We were just like, "Yep." Listened to a few beats, like a bunch of beats, and I selected a handful of them, and then he started sending me more after like kind of saw like the vibe I was looking for. And I
Can
just
you
started-
remember which of the beats were the ones that you selected, and then which were the ones that were developed? once?
Unafraid.
Yep.
What else? I don't know.
Highest Self, I made like
Right.
a couple
Like a week.
days before the record came out.
Yeah.
When it ends up being the title track.
Yeah,
Right,
because we
right.
made a couple that didn't make the album too.
Yep.
I think we sort of like one
One
thing I
about
was
Wim
keeping
Hof.
in mind with some of the subject matter was like this record musically needs to be upbeat and energetic and fun.
Yeah.
Because I think it's easy when you're dealing with some heavier topics.
Just not catch people or just
Right,
not
and-
interest people. It's like, whoa, shit's too heavy.
and like,
next.
oh, you're making a record about like yoga and universal consciousness and
It's
like
boring.
right. And you got to keep in mind, like, at the end of the day, we're playing this in a live setting at
Yeah.
a fucking bar on a Friday night. You
Bunch
know,
of
like,
drunk people, yeah.
right? Like,
Or
who
kids,
wanna be,
you know,
who paid
like-
$10 to be entertained. You know, so I was trying to kind of balance that with like, okay, I need to make some bass-heavy, upbeat, fun stuff so that this message actually gets heard.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the beats that you had for Unafraid, is that something that you created once the two of you had decided that you would do this project, or that's something that you already
That one
had?
already existed.
Yeah, so
And
there
then-
was somewhere it was going through and being like, okay, this would fit the vibe that we're looking for. This is
Yeah.
something I already have. We've got 5 or 6 of those. Then kind of filling in the rest with like, okay, now that we know what we're going for, I can make some more stuff
Yeah.
that matches that.
So was Unafraid, you had it complete, or you had parts of it and then you adapted it?
That was
once?
actually a Nike commercial. I had first heard
True.
it as
Ah.
a Nike commercial that
Really?
Big
Yeah.
Cats did
Which-
for the new Air Force Ones.
Yeah. So
Which bit of it? whole-
so I did like a minute-long sketch,
Version.
sort
Yeah.
of, that was for this sneaker commercial. Chance heard that and then started writing to it, and then we filled it out to actually fit, the format of that song. So it was kind of, I guess it was like the verse section of that.
Yes.
Like,
For the first verse, no matter who's elected, they should probably be impeached.
Yeah.
So that bit
Yeah.
Was in the Nike commercial.
Yes.
Well, that's the most political statement, of course.
It's pretty blatant.
In the record.
It's fun to catch people's
you could
ears.
say it's political, I
Yeah,
guess.
or no, it's just kind of. Yeah,
That is stretch.
I mean, that was exactly how I felt. I think all 5 of the first demos I sent you were like a day after our initial meeting.
Yeah.
He sent me about 5 or 6, sent me 6 beats, and I sent him back 5 songs.
Okay.
Like a day later, and I remember because it was the day before the election,
Right.
And so pretty much all of those lyrics came out in one day.
Yeah.
I didn't write anything on this album. I just freestyled it like a bar at a time.
Yeah.
So I just sat at my little workstation and just recorded.
Writing is in like literally writing.
I never
independent-
wrote
None
it.
of that.
Yeah. So the first time I ever actually rapped all those things were rehearsing for the show, because I just recorded it at like a bar at a time, and was just able to be super productive the first day, and that was really inspiring to Spencer. So the next day, he was like that same day, he's like, "Oh, I got this one too. I got this one too," and it like the floodgates were open.
What was it about this record that led to that process? Was it just that the time crunch?
It's
or something else
definitely
as well?
that. I mean, it's been, I'd say, in the past year, that's become my favorite method.
Yeah.
Just because I'm not very fast at typing or writing.
Yeah.
I can't type or write as fast as I can think. And then also, since I've done so much writing in my life, all the unconscious patterns exist in that realm. Like if I write it down, like those, it might sound like something I've done before because I'm writing it.
Yep.
So to break a lot of habits, I just quit writing it, and then you can access new sounds and new, won't necessarily sound exactly like something I've done before.
Yeah.
I think it's easier to get into like a formula or a routine when you're writing everything out versus like if you're just freestyling something, you have a 1-bar idea or even just a phrase, then you're building off of that sort of spontaneously. It's more improvised.
Vibey.
You go in a direction that you would probably never go in if you just sat down and started writing.
Yeah,
exactly. And that method is, Mike the Martyr especially, like every time I get up with him, we always make a jam. And that's just his preferred method, is just bar by bar. It's like, nah, just do it bar by bar. Like he doesn't really promote writing. Don't write shit down. Like, nah, just like, what are you thinking right now? The spontaneity of it.
The integrity.
But I've become just extremely more productive doing that. Like I've made more raps this year than any year in my life.
Yeah.
And it's about, a combination of still writing sometimes, but primarily freestyling, and that just came about because Mason taught me how to use GarageBand, and I got a USB microphone for my birthday. So just technologically capable of getting my thoughts out and being able to share those.
Yeah. Thank you, Eric, and thank you, technology.
Yeah, just without, and shout out my baby mama, Stephanie, for that lovely, thoughtful birthday present. So the productivity is just through the roof right now. I can easily make a song like without any snags in like an hour.
Yeah.
And this highest self was like I just wanted to break boundaries, break my previous records, and just do something heartfelt. Like having a clear goal on where we were going was like pretty new too, because usually I just make a bunch of shit and then figure out what it means later.
Okay, so the clear goal is to when this would come out, because it had to be ready for that Ice House show, and you also had a clear kind of philosophical goal. You wanted to make a record.
We had a theme and a deadline, and
and that's what it. Yeah, and that just made itself happen. It was so easy, like it was unbelievably easy that it's like still hard to digest that record's already out in the world and people are like quoting it back to me, and I'm like, oh yeah,
people singing along.
I did
at
say
the Ice House
that,
show.
Yeah, I just
before you in hardly have them memorized.
Like on Friday I was like a special guest at the Big Baby Drum show at the Fine Line, and I played 2 of those songs, and I fucked up. Like, it was like not even like a verse in. It was just like, oh shit. Like kind of freestyle. Like it was, I totally tanked. But anyway, like I forgot that even though these songs are brand new, like I've only performed them once, like once or twice. I mean, twice, and that the second time didn't go well. So yeah, it's all really new, and that's exciting. That's what's so exciting is how quickly everything happened.
So to what extent is it a record of its time, or to what extent is it kind of timeless? There was that one lyric that was very much the day before the election, no matter who's elected, they should probably be
Although
impeached.
that might be the most timeless bar on the whole thing.
That's what I was gonna say. He was like, oh, we should probably change it to like who's in office, and I was like, that just doesn't like have the ring to it. Plus, there's gonna be elections every 2 years, anyways. Right. And you know where I'm at with my you know faith in a giant structure like government is you only get to levels of power like that by being kind of obsessed with power. And real leaders and selfless people that should be in office will never be in office because of the nature of what politics is, which is like if you don't want power, if you don't want to be the one in power, you will never reach that office. So I mean,
it's very Socratic.
Any candidate that's really like a real candidate to be elected is probably the worst person to look out for your needs.
So from the nature of politics to the nature of power, like that song, Unafraid, ends by saying the only real power is the power you step into. Mm-hmm. So could you elaborate a bit on that aspect?
Well, it's like, just think of how big of a deal the election was this year. Mm-hmm. Couldn't turn anywhere without hearing somebody's opinion about it. Start viewing the world as like, oh, you know, that person and this person, and you know, just everything about the scope and perspective of the world around me was through the lens of this election. Not to say that the most powerful person, arguably, in the world or whatever, it shouldn't be a big topic, but how much in my day-to-day life do I give a fuck who's president? Like the president has, you know, makes very big decisions that affect a whole lot of people, understood. But that's on a very macro level. The power within is the only thing that you should really be worried about. Yep. And what I did notice was through the whole election was all this uncertainty, felt completely disempowered by even thinking about how fucked the election was. Right. And how just, you know, this is garbage. It's like both of these people that one of them's gonna become president, well, all, you know, there's nothing good about here, you know, like there's really very little to say like this represents me. So being completely disenchanted by the idea of this or that, being stressed about who is president is disempowering to the fact that you are in control of your daily decisions. Right. And you can't start seeing the world, especially your neighbors, red or blue, or Hillary or Trump, or all these things, and ascribing all of these characteristics of another person to these individuals. The only real power is the power that you step into. You could worry about who's president all the time. That might not really affect your life besides the way you make it affect your life. Yeah.
So it's important who's in office because that's going to have a lot of impact on real lives and on society, of course. Sure. But it's also important how focus on these questions and that very abstract debate, it's important how that affects your individual journey.
Power, right? Yeah. Well, it's so disempowering when you see there's like, okay, an election, neither winner is really winning for any of us. You know, like the people that are in power are there for their own power. Yeah, and The media is a very powerful thing. It can make you think this has everything to do with your life. And your life is about to change drastically, but you could change it just by voting. that's a beautiful thing. That's a
It's
beautiful
empowering
right
and
to have,
disempowering
but
at the
it's
same time.
also disempowering.
Yeah.
Yeah, because really, we don't have power over those things, especially when, the nature of the internet or the how huge the media is right now.
Yeah.
It's really like a singular consciousness. As much as we think it's like, oh, we're all individuals. No, it's like if you look at Facebook or if you look at the media, you're already being guided into a lane. You're already being put into a box. And you're already putting yourself into a box by thinking you chose to feel a certain way about it. It's like, nah, somebody chose that for you. They said either you're this or you're this.
Yeah.
And that's extremely disempowering because we're all of it.
I think that contextualizes two of my favorite lyrics, or two of the most, I think, important lyrics in the record in terms of like the philosophy. Don't be worried about nothing because you know how to grow is right next to that, the line about voting. And then right at the end of Woke, look inside it, the it is the mind. Look inside it when you see me gliding because you understand on this trip of life who's the passenger and who's the pilot. So one lyric is saying, you know how to grow, don't worry because you know how to grow. Mm-hmm. And the other one is saying, if you see me flourishing, then don't focus on that, focus on your mind and think about being a passenger or being a pilot in your life. Yeah?
Right.
Knowing how to readjust, having this capacity, which is something that you develop, it's work that you do. Yeah?
Totally.
Yeah, so love is work, but not all work is love. This all works its way into the record, but it all comes from the work and the practice and the discipline. Mm-hmm. So what is the nature of this discipline?
This is all fairly new to me. Yoga, I knew yoga at a very surface level, and I used it for stress relief and, stretching when I was sore.
Yes.
Occasionally, like, time or two a week, depending on just using it as I needed it.
Yeah.
It wasn't until like 3 or 4 months ago that I got really like immersed into it. And
through Radiant
Life.
Life,
Matt
which is
Portwood.
Yeah.
Matthew Portwood, I was introduced to by V. Boehm. Really good friend of mine, somebody who, when I first met, I understood, I could totally tell, it was like more than obvious that she understood energies, had a deeper understanding about how, energy and what you radiate, what you put out there, how to glow, basically.
Yeah.
She has just her spirit is bright, and it was clear right when I met her.
Me too.
So after a couple years of making music with her, just becoming good friends, her and I and Dem Atlas were hanging out after the Basilica block party, just talking about life and philosophy. And she's like, I want you to meet my teacher. You guys should come with me. And we went and met the owner of Radiant Life.
She is a member of the Yoga Alliance.
Oh yeah, she's a great teacher. I've taken her class dozens of times, it feels like, in the past couple months. But yeah, she introduced me to Matt. Matt was like, you should be teaching yoga, because we just, because we hung out for like 4 hours just talking about life, and just like, he saw that I could like do handstands and stuff, and he was like, you should be teaching yoga. And it was strange because I had meditated just earlier. I was going through a really rough time, just about finding my way with the whole Philando shootings and like my relationship just hitting like a really bad patch. And I was just really wondering what I was going to do with my life. So I meditated on what is my next step. This was probably 3 days prior to meeting him. And then when he said, you should be a yoga teacher, I was like, whoa. Wow. It clicked. And 3 months later, I started their teacher training. So I met Matt's ex-wife, Jana Portwood,
who's the other director.
Yeah, she's the co-owner of Radiant Life. Just really awesome people that seemingly always have great advice and are super like physically, like they're very strong, flexible, like physically like very appealing, like the things they can do is like, wow, that's amazing. You are really physically strong and capable, But
Check
they're
out the images of them on the website, and the listeners will see what they're physically capable
They're
of.
very
Yeah.
physically capable, and the most awesome thing about it was all the philosophy that they taught, because it's like they, when you understand the secrets about life, the things that are the most troubling, the things that are the biggest challenges, the things that are the most painful, that feel like suffering,
Yes.
are actually the best lessons that only make you more equipped. Because the nature of life is, the struggles, the challenges only get harder.
Yes.
And so the practice of yoga is just a preparation for the real challenges that will face you. Like you will run into bigger problems than somebody cutting you off in traffic, or being broke, or
But those can be the moments that you learn from.
where you learn and build. Yeah. So I learned just so much about like diet, lifestyle, chemicals, hygiene.
This is what Matt specializes in. Yeah,
Totally. That's
within,
how he.
within yoga. Yeah.
His history in the yoga game was he and Jaina were the caterers, or the personal chefs of the CEO of Core Power.
Wow.
Who recently, he just passed away like like 2 weeks ago. But they were specialists in raw vegan cuisine.
Okay.
And this was like whatever, early 2000s or whatever. So they'd been practicing yoga, but they became very, very prominent yogis, and then trained everybody at Core Power, and then worked for Core Power for like 9 years, and then moved to a different country and came back and started a more like their mom and pop shop, which is like the Radiant Life. It's just an authentic, there's nothing like, once again, there's nothing wrong with Core Power or, similar things, but they're more fitness oriented and corporate as hell. So like they're super mega corporations. So that may or may not be the vibe that you get when you go in there. If you go into Radiant Life, it's very, intimate. It's real. It's like a home.
They say on their website, our school emphasizes development of conscious awareness, and the goal is to hold self, in like inverted commas, in relation to self with a capital S that you already referred to, like highest self in the title of the record, the world and others. If I understand correctly, Matt, when he was younger, was ill and needed to change his diet.
I think so. Yeah, that's what I understand. Is he was into martial arts and all this other stuff, but like a lot of great yogis in history, like Iyengar.
Yeah,
dude was super sick as a kid, and like out of necessity, you have to use these practices just to like get by, and then those practices, in turn, they turn you superhuman, or they make you more capable than your average next person.
And then you end up with someone like Wim Hof.
Yeah, all right, Wim Hof. I mean, every listener just go Google him, because I can't. I don't have my references directly in front of me.
Yeah.
But the dude is known as the Zero Man because he is impervious to any temperature, and he's climbed mountains in sub-zero temperatures, like in all around the world, in just his underwear and boots, and spends 24 hours in, deadly conditions.
Yeah.
With just naked.
So doesn't awareness of like the physical aspect of this, so we were talking about yoga philosophy, but clearly the yoga philosophy is focused on the body in large part, and the suffering and the physicality of the suffering. What lens does that put on the song God Body?
That's exactly it's the integration of soul, mind, and body. That term is used throughout other religions as well, like
God body is.
In Christianity, it's like, this is my body, or the body is a temple, or all of these things. People are, I've just recently started teaching a class, and it's mostly my close friends, and we're all used to talking about life in depth.
Yeah.
But people just forget about their body. People are so unaware of their body, and we live in these things all day, every day. We don't realize the routines that we do in our jobs, in our life, in our, recreation. And we end up just living extremely unconsciously. And and even the headiest of heady philosopher friends of mine
Yep.
can be way out of touch with their body.
Perhaps especially because of like
exactly
the
being
mind-body
too heady,
dualism.
right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So the practice of yoga is very physical. Like my class that I teach is a vinyasa asana. It's like it'll make you sweat. You'll definitely find some intensity, and then you'll find the intensity like in a yang or like a fire type of setting, and then also in a yin, like very chill. You'll be laying still but feeling intensity. So it's a combination of stretching and flexing that basically anybody can do. In my last class, I had a 60-year-old and a 5-year-old, and
Wow.
people of all different shapes and sizes and skill levels, all getting 100% of the benefit of the class.
Yeah.
So the practice is beautiful, and it's definitely physical. It'll bring your mind back into your body,
Yeah.
and through that, it is transformative. Like it transforms your mind and body rapidly.
Yeah, and even like stepping very much outside of yoga philosophy to like contemporary neurobiology.
Sure.
Like Antonio Damasio, for example, says that the left cerebral hemisphere of humans is prone to fabricating verbal narratives that do not necessarily accord with the truth. So yeah, and
That Byron Katie book is all about that.
Exactly,
The
and that's-
stories we live, we're just living by these stories.
and our brain is creating them,
Yeah.
and so our body is involved.
Right.
That's what the neuroscience highlights. Our body is involved in creating these stories.
Totally.
And then the yoga philosophy and Byron Katie highlighting, and I'm quoting that from the introduction to the Byron Katie book.
Sure.
They're highlighting something else that we can do with our brain in relation to the body to kind of counter that.
Sure.
Yeah.
The body is meant to work. Idle, no growth comes from comfort. So, really, to physically work something like yoga asana, where you're doing these exercises or whatever,
Yep.
you grow because your intention is love. You set your intention. It's like, I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this to radiate love. And it's hard work. But that hard work, the fruit of it is not, it's not something for yourself, even though all the side effects, you might be gaining from it, but it's an outward, it's radiating love.
Yeah.
The nature of the work is that everybody that's alive needs to be working, and we live in a society that doesn't necessarily see that, because there's a lot of ways to not work and still get by. All we really need to do is just work, and the outcome is what it is. You
Yeah.
know, like,
There's a line about the fruit.
I'm entitled to the labor, not entitled to the fruit.
Yeah. And the labor isn't like, it's not saying I'm entitled to have a job or to be employed.
Right, no, it's just that
So what does work mean?
the nature of work. If you are alive, it is work. We're so narrowly removed from the creatures that used to roam the forest and pick berries, and like people are genetically the same thing that existed like 10,000 years ago, that literally lived off the earth and worked all day just
Yep.
to scrape enough food from the surroundings, food and water, to survive. So our bodies still like chemically need to work and need to like do these things to feel like a human being.
You can't
Yeah.
choose not to work.
Right, but I mean, people do. I don't know. You can call it entitlement or just a messed up perspective about like what is life. When you go to other countries, everybody's working. Like everybody's working for much less than we have here,
Yep.
and it's satisfying. Like people, our troubles as a society that are widespread stem from this feeling that we should have more when we don't even understand how vast what we have is.
Yeah. You said that the record is informed by the Yoga Sutras.
Yeah.
And there are 4 chapters to the Yoga Sutras.
Yeah, mostly the second is what, the second book.
Yeah, which...
It's like the practice.
Yeah, practice or discipline. The third one, so it's from the Sanskrit word for practice or discipline. Yeah?
Right.
And then the third one, the Sanskrit word for power or manifestation. We've been talking about power, so clearly that's coming into what's real power.
Yeah.
And then the fourth, the translation of that is isolation in one translation, but also emancipation and liberation. So I find it interesting. We're talking about community, and the way in which you thought about what you're doing with the record is you want to have an impact on the culture, because you release a record and there's like a ripple effect. Yeah.
Right.
You want to communicate a message and have an impact, and then the sound, making sure that it's something that people will enjoy at Ice House, like at a bar on a Friday. It's interesting, the combination of focusing on the community and then the focus on the self, because if I understand, from my synopsis here of the Yoga Sutras, being isolated, being aware of one's, simultaneously in a way, one's oneness with everything and the fact that we're all the highest self, but also one becomes isolated. What do you think about that, and what impact does that have on the record? Thoughts about that?
When I first started reading into what alchemy is, it's like, it's fine, like transmuting lead into gold or whatever. There's a lot of physical and scientific ideas behind it, but it's actually like a philosophical thing. You have to dig deep through the depths and the darkness and everything to find the gold within. I mean, I feel like a lot of the uncertainty and troubles that I was facing a year ago had to do with me searching for answers outside of myself, and spending little to no time understanding what was inside. Looking within would have a lot to do with that isolation, understanding that the power is within. You have to go through darkness. You have to look deep within stuff that is unsettling. So I think isolation just has a lot to do with being comfortable alone, or within, in the vast universe inside yourself. You have to really be alone, and it's kind of a scary thing. But then you grow.
Exactly. One does the work, and there's something solitary about this work.
Totally.
But by virtue of doing the work, one's next interaction with someone could be less seen through the lens of these false stories that our brain is inevitably creating. So it kind of brings us closer to others in a way as well.
Totally. And that's really what it is. When you stop, we have, most of the judgments that we make are negative self-judgments.
Right.
We live in a culture that is very down on ourselves. And that is put into action by people being very down on others, because it makes temporarily yourself feel better. Say, hey, at least that's not me. That's you, right. And that's not me. But we tend to notice the problems or shortcomings or suffering of others because it's really somewhere inside of ourselves. And the world that we see around us really has everything to do with what's sitting in ourselves that is either unresolved or trying to find its way out. And I mean, you could look as a person, you have an infinite amount of places to look, and an infinite number of feelings that you could feel. Yet we tend to keep on doing the same things because our mind creates routines. Our neural pathways want to seek pleasure and do the same thing that we've done before. So we start getting this limited view of all of our capabilities. It's like, oh, well, that person, all these assholes, and, you just find all of the negative that is living within you instead of facing the negative that is within you, forgiving it, and then seeing it in others and forgiving them as well. And then all of a sudden it doesn't faze you anymore. Like the work is profound. The way that things change, you literally grow so rapidly when you let go of things. And that's the work, you know.
And in your synopsis, when you were talking about the work, you talked, neural pathways is something you were talking about. You're talking about, mental health, the mind and the body. It's all kind of coming together. That it all comes together in another favorite lyric of mine from the song "Unafraid," which we'll close with in a moment.
Dope.
I had a bad back, not enough breath in my journals, and I had that clashing with the rest of my virtues.
Yeah.
So, having read up on all of this, yoga philosophy for the interview, there were so many aspects of that I thought, that I understand what's happening there. So, why do we end up with this lyric in a song which is, which has just been about like who's going to get elected? Like it's covering so much stuff, and then all of a sudden we have this. You reflecting on the fact that you had a bad back, focusing on your breathing and how that was clashing with your virtues.
Yeah.
So what does all that mean?
It's everything's connected, man. Yeah, so that's like literally what was going on. I said, I'm back from the depths of the furnace, like I've found a really low place to be, it could be described as I was living in hell. I was just so shitty. Found the depths that I did not want to be in.
Yep.
It physically hurt, the feeling of it is just like incapacitating. It makes the world weighs heavier on you.
Yep.
And so I say, I had a bad back, not enough breath in my journals. I wasn't for like breath, literally like yoga, breathing to, create a posture of healthy flow of prana and energy.
Yeah.
But also journaling, like putting breath, like speaking into the journals. Journaling has a lot to do with finding your power or seeing how rapidly you change when you're going through a transformation.
Yes.
Like the work, and then journaling, and you look back like a week ago and be like, wow, like I was really suffering.
Yeah.
And these things that I was suffering are so minute, like perspective changes everything. And once you realize how temporary everything is and how much of it is just the perspective that we're creating and we're living this story or whatever.
I'm unafraid, back from the depths of the furnace. Had a bad back, not enough breath in my journals. And I had that clashing with the rest of my virtues. Life Mad Max, like a damn movie and commercial. It's a changing of the guard.